Swipe up. I now call the Carroll County Board of Commissioners work session to order today on Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone. The first thing on our agenda is a financial recap from our Finance Director, Alicia Searcy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have the September 2024 financial information before you on this afternoon. Just wanted to recap our revenue and let you know how it's trending. Our tax revenue's trending a little bit behind where we were year-to-date last year. License and permits are down slightly, not much. Fines, fees, and forfeitures are up actually about $65,000, and then our charges for services are up about $180,000, and our other revenues up about $28,000. Sales tax was flat for the first time this year compared to the prior same period last year for the first time in several years. So I think we're seeing a slowing in the economy. I think that we're seeing also a slowing with new permits. That may change after next Tuesday, but for right now we're seeing not a downturn, but a slowing and a flattening of our revenue. On the expense side, we're pretty much where we need to be year to date. Overall, our expenses are 6.9, or for last month they were 6.97% of the budget, for a total of 25.66% year to date. Compared to last year, we were at 25.22% of our budget year to date. We're a little ahead of we're 25% through the year, but we have those insurance premiums, the audit fees, and the computer services that we pay as a lump sum up front early in the year. So the percentages will drop back as we go on through the year there. Our cash balances are up about $2.8 million in our general fund year over year. In SPLOST, not much activity in the 13 SPLOST. The majority of the activity there is in LMIG, where we've been doing some paving and working. The big project that we're working on is the Tice Carrollton Road widening, which I think at this point may be close to complete. In the 21 SPLOST, we've got a lot of activity there. We've got payments on the Judicial Center of $129,000, payments on the new admin building of $43,000, payments on the new fire station of $662,739, new fire equipment of $20,000, and then in Public Works we've got our road supplies of $126,525 for a total of $982,000 in projects that were paid for. Our SPLOST receipts were at $2,557,000, and then we paid out to the cities, and then we also got our Safer Street grant of $79,791. So that's kind of a summary of where we are through September.
I think, like you said, I believe consumption has been down for quite some time now, but when inflated price times the same tax rate, you're going to take in more money, and I think that's what's been happening up until the last couple of months. Like you said, it's starting to trend down. My only question, everything looks in order to me. My only question on the interest, do you have a rough idea of how many accounts we have that are fixed as far as rates for an extended period of time versus what may be floating accounts? Because I guess I'm a little bit shocked that it's almost in line with prior year today, but it's down a little bit by $40,000. So I guess you've got some accounts that are floating.
Right. The Georgia Fund 1 money's floating. A majority of the money is floating because it's in either T-bills or Georgia Fund 1. I did in September do a 9-month Treasury bill to hold interest as high as I could. Interest trended down during September, and it's actually trended back up a little bit. But the only fixed money we have is a CD at Bank OZK, which is getting ready to renew, and I don't know what the renewal rate is at this point. But yeah, interest is off just a tad.
But it's still, when we look back 3 or 4 years, the discussions we've had where we were making 20,000 instead of 530,000 at this
Right,
time,
right.
it still looks good. So thanks for
Right.
There's no further questions. I'll ask Avery Jackson, the county attorney, and Hubert Sparks, our chief appraiser, to give us a report on what the county calls House Bill 581, but on the ballot, it is a different number.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, District Commissioners. Myself and Hubert Sparks are here today to just briefly discuss what is also known as House Bill 581, or is on the ballot as House Resolution number 1022, and it is a statewide floating homestead exemption. It's called the Save Our Homes Act. And again, the voters are currently voting on that as we speak, and we'll know if it passes next week. The purpose of this legislation was to keep property taxes on homes from increasing by a significant amount in short periods, like a year-over-year period. It's to limit the increases on property taxes like we've seen over the last couple of years that have been substantial in some years. So the statewide local floating homestead exemption would only allow the taxable value of a home to increase by the rate of inflation. So that's what it would be capped at on a year-over-year basis. So there's 3 things we wanted to discuss with you today. One is that Carroll County currently has a local floating homestead exemption and has had one since 2003. So consequently, the statewide one's not going to affect Carroll County's budget or Carroll County's citizens' taxes on their county M&O. Now, it will affect them on their school system or city taxes potentially. The second is that we'll briefly discuss the statewide floating homestead exemption. And third, there's also, as a part of the legislation, there's a new 1% sales tax, also called FLOST, or floating local option sales tax, which is similar to a LOST or SPLOST, and ultimately operates to reduce property taxes for the citizens as well. But what is important to this board and the citizens for their Carroll County M&O taxes is that there will be no effect, because the Carroll County local floating homestead exemption that's in place and has been in place since 2003 is a better benefit to the citizens than the new statewide one on their county M&O taxes. So as to this board's budgeting, there will be no effect. As to the citizens, what they see on their tax bill, there'll be no effect for that. So it's more of an educational discussion as to the effect of our current one and how the citizens might be affected with their other local jurisdictions and taxing jurisdictions. First, like I said, Carroll County's had in place a local floating homestead exemption since 2003. We have a slide up that kind of shows you the effect of the Carroll County local floating homestead exemption. There's only a few counties in Georgia that have a local floating homestead exemption, maybe 20 to 25 out of 159 counties. And again, this Carroll County local floating homestead exemption only applies to the county M&O property taxes and not school system or city taxes. It's also called a frozen homestead exemption because the effect of it is it freezes your net taxable value. And that's how you get the ultimate net tax, is you apply the millage rate to that taxable value to get the net taxes. You can see this is a real taxpayer in Carroll County that has had a homestead exemption since 2015 or before. And you can see the value of the home increase over the last 10 years has been, $146,000 to $421,000. So a significant increase in home values in Carroll County. The assessment value is 40% of that fair market value. And you can see the local floating homestead exemption, how that has increased from $8,000 exemption in 2015 to $117,000 exemption in 2024. As the taxpayer's home has increased and that 40% value has increased, the local floating homestead exemption has increased at the exact same rate. Therefore, that net taxable value has stayed the same for this taxpayer from 2015 through 2024. And you can see that the Board of Commissioners has actually lowered the millage rate since 2015 from that 8.414 to what is now a 6.363. So a significant reduction in millage rate over that time, which ultimately led to a reduction in taxes. So citizens in Carroll County that have been under a homestead exemption for the last 10 years have seen reductions in their net taxes that they've paid to Carroll County for maintenance and operations. Again, this exemption did not affect the school taxes or the city taxes, so citizens might have seen increases in those over time based on the value of the home, but the Carroll County M&O portion actually went down over that time. But that's why the legislatures have enacted the new statewide proposal, because of the significant increases in values that we've seen over the last 10 years, and especially the last 3 or 4 years. So again, it's currently on the ballot. I think we all expect it to pass. So what will it do? Again, it will apply to all taxing jurisdictions. Again, it won't affect Carroll County because we already have one that's a better benefit, so the citizens get that better benefit. However, it could impact school and city taxes. So it will limit the taxable value of the home. So you can see the taxable value on the Carroll County one has frozen, but that taxable value would have gone up for schools and cities in Carroll County. But this new statewide local floating homestead exemption would limit that taxable value from increasing greater than the rate of inflation on a year-over-year basis. And it applies to homestead property only. That's the house you live in if you filed a homestead application, and the surrounding acreage. It wouldn't cover additional homes on the property. It could cover additional buildings, but it wouldn't cover additional homes. So the taxpayers must file a homestead exemption application to take advantage of it, and it would lock in. If you have a current homestead exemption, it'd lock in your values for your 2024 values. So you wouldn't have to take any additional action if you're already under a homestead exemption. Ultimately, the inflation calculation will be governed by the rules of the Georgia Department of Revenue. They haven't come out with those yet, but it's going to be probably tied to CPI. So, an average of 2 to 3% a year is what it could increase. Of course, if you have inflation at 9%, it could increase up to that as well. And again, why is this important to the citizens in Carroll County if the county M&O taxes are already frozen? It's important for those cities and schools. The other taxing jurisdictions will have to decide whether they opt out of the new rule. They have a one-time opt-out provision, and there's a 3-month period from January 1st, 2025 to March 1st, 2025 that local governments can opt out of the new law. For a local government to opt out, they'd have to advertise 3 public hearings and pass a resolution and send that resolution to the Secretary of State indicating that they have decided to opt out. So what are kind of the pros and cons of a local floating homestead? Again, the pros, I think everybody realizes, is that it limits the price or the tax appreciation of a property and the tax increase over that year-over-year period. Some of the cons that you may have heard about are it shifts the tax burden to commercial or non-homestead properties. If homestead properties are locked in and they're not seeing any increases, or in our case, seeing decreases, that tax revenue has to come from somewhere, and that's commercial, industrial, non-homestead properties. Also, one of the cons, that you may have heard about is that two people in a neighborhood that have almost identical houses could be paying significantly different tax bills. One person could have a local floating homestead that they've been under for 10 years, and their taxes could be a couple $100, whereas somebody else that just moved into an identical house next door could have a tax bill that's a couple of $1,000 because they're being taxed on the appreciated rate of, like in this case, $400,000 home versus what would be locked in as a $146,000 home. So you have different people paying different rates, and the people that just moved in are going to be paying higher rates. Also, some people say that might cause people not to buy and sell homes as much because they want to keep the lower tax value that they've locked in. So maybe they're not going to buy and sell homes in the community as much and stick with what they have. And again, Carroll County's been operating under this one for a number of years. This board has been able to budget appropriately under that scenario and provide services to its citizens. So the other taxing jurisdictions, and again, this board doesn't have to make a decision to opt in or opt out. We don't have to opt out because the citizens will be getting the better of the two local floating homesteads, and the better one's the one that's been in place for since 2020 or since 2003. There is one more piece of the legislation I wanted to discuss, and that's that floating local option sales tax, or FLOST. It's very similar to a LOST or SPLOST, which is a 1% sales tax collected county-wide. For the county or the cities in the county to participate in that FLOST, all of the cities and the county must have some local floating homestead. So if any city or county opts out of the new statewide one, if it's passed, then no city or county in our area would be able to participate in a FLOST. If the school system opts out, it would not affect the cities and the counties being able to participate in a FLOST. So what would be required if we wanted to participate in a FLOST, in addition to all the cities and county having a local floating homestead, we'd have to have an IGA between the county and the cities as to the distribution of the funds, just like LOST or SPLOST. And there would be a sales tax referendum that must be passed by the voters. That's in addition to what's currently on the ballot. And again, just like LOST or SPLOST, the voters would have to approve that. And then it would only be implemented for 5 years, and any renewal of that would require additional legislative approval in addition to a new referendum. And FLOST is important to the taxpayers as well, because that would reduce the ad valorem taxes collected by the amount of FLOST taxes collected. So it's another benefit, and it's a benefit to all the taxpayers, not just homestead exempt properties, because all taxpayers in Carroll County paying property taxes would have a reduction in property tax by the sales tax collected. So if there are any specific questions, we have Hubert here who probably knows a lot more about the ins and outs than I do.
So the question, I understand the floating homestead from minding your conversations through the years very well. My question when you're talking about the FLOST, so the way really LOST and SPLOST are different. I mean, they're both a sales tax at 1%, but LOST is directly related to taking in funding to apply essentially a 1 mil reduction on the property taxes, correct? In other words, that's what specifically that LOST is translated into on a property tax bill. That's the trade-off. So when you sit and talk about that the FLOST is directly related to the amount of money it would bring in reduction, I'm wondering, does it work in the same manner as LOST?
My understanding is it would reduce the property taxes of the taxpayers based on the amount that's collected. Is that true? That's correct. Yeah.
Maybe this is a similar question, but how would FLOST reduce ad valorem for a particular taxpayer?
There would be a line basically showing the amount of, say, millage collected from Flost that would reduce the millage rate or the net tax applied to a specific taxpayer. So is that?
That's correct. That's my understanding.
Yep.
One of the other things that I did want to add too, if I can, this, when we're talking about all this stuff, and every year we send out an annual notice of assessment, and down at the bottom of the annual notice of assessment, there's an estimate of tax there. If this passes, there will no longer be an estimate of tax. There will be a rollback rate for each tax and jurisdiction that will be on the bottom of that assessment notice. And so if this rollback rate differs from that when the tax bills go out, there will be a statement that whatever tax and jurisdiction implemented a different rate that did not include this or did not implement exactly what that rollback rate was, they'll have to notify that this will be a tax increase for that tax and jurisdiction.
Okay, so Flost is another sales tax.
That's correct.
Okay, are we going to be limited like we are with Splost? Or can we use the Flost for anything we see fit?
I believe there's not limitations like Splost. It's more general in nature as to what you can use the funds for.
So we could use it for salaries?
I believe that's correct. Yes, it could be used to offset the general fund revenues. Yeah.
But that was my question about the lost and the flossed. Is my understanding is lost has a specific purpose. Splost has a narrower purpose of what you can use it for. Lost is a specific purpose and what it is offsetting in the property tax bill, correct? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And maybe I'm not trying to hold you on the spot. I'm just trying to understand. To me, they would all be separate in nature. They may be a 1% sales tax, but every one of them may be applied different.
You're absolutely.
Of how they're going to.
They are all separate. There's separate legislation creating each one, and there are separate terms and conditions and how you use and how it operates for each one of those. Yes.
Right.
So they are separate and distinct as to how they will operate. And it may be a moot point because until we know the legislation has to pass, but we think it will. And then we have to see if any of the cities in the county opt out. And so if any one of them opts out, then there would be no floss to participate in or collect.
I think the bigger question moving forward, there's no doubt that our taxpayers have received a significant tax reduction or a burden from the Carroll County Board of Commissioners, and that's something that I explained to people like you did. If you live in the city, you've got a line item. If you're 65 or less, you've got a school board tax, and then everyone's got a County Board of Commissioners tax. So when they look at that, they see, wasn't there a statute passed at the state some years ago that basically prevented values from lowering? And where I'm going with this is you gave the example of someone being in their home in '03 versus someone that just applied. So while the lock-in is great, we know that we're at an all-time inflationary period that is substantial in my lifetime. So we're looking at someone just moving in their home in 2024, and they may be locking in, and that's great, but they're locking it at a high value. And then if the economy turns around, hopefully in a better state, where inflation has extremely reduced itself, does that lock-in 5 years from now really benefit that person because they've locked in at the peak of, in the past few decades, historically high property values or home values? So I mean, that's not something you necessarily answer on the spot, but I think that becomes the bigger question. Is that floating homestead allowed to continue to produce for the taxpayers moving forward if inflation is extremely reduced again, whereas it's been extremely inflated in the past few years? You may be locking in somebody at a value that...
That's correct. It could have that effect.
One last question. So if we say Carroll County's homestead exemption system is better, which I agree with, and consequently we don't, or the county government doesn't decide to go with this new thing, can we then go with Flost? I don't think so, but
Yes, we can.
Okay.
As long as you have a floating homestead exemption, you don't have to have the state one.
Don't have to have this?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's really not our choice. In the statewide legislation that's being passed, it says that the taxpayers get the benefit of the better one, and that's just calculated. Hubert's office will actually have to keep track of both numbers, but it's just, there's no way that it would be better than the Carroll County one. The Carroll County one's better because it's the frozen, it locks it in. It doesn't allow any movement, whereas the statewide one allows it to move at the rate of inflation up over time. Consequently, the legislation requires that they get the better of the two numbers, which will be the Carroll County one. So there's really nothing for the board to do or decide on that, while other taxing jurisdictions will be making that decision and will be having to decide whether to opt out or opt in. There's really no decision that the Board of Commissioners has to make because the taxpayers already have a better one. The legislation requires that the better one stay in place, and they'll get that benefit automatically.
So if one of the cities say they want to opt out of that, is it all or none, or can they opt out and everybody else participate in this?
If any one city in the county opts out and does not have another floating homestead exemption, then no city or county in our county can participate in the FLOST. So now each individual jurisdiction that doesn't opt out of the statewide floating homestead will be still participating in that, and their citizens will get the benefit of that tax reduction. It's just the sales tax option that the local governments would not be able to participate in.
And are they opting out through their elected body, or are they opting out through a referendum to the voters in the area? Because our floating homestead exemption was put into place through vote of
That's correct.
taxpayers, and so that's a total different dynamic.
Yes, it would just be the governing body of the taxing jurisdiction that determines to opt out. They'll hold 3 public hearings between January 1 and March 1st, and then they would have a vote, and they can decide to opt out at that time.
And Mr. Hubert, one question for you. Do you have any idea what percentage of the Carroll County residents claim their homestead exemption? Because I felt like there's a lot of people that I talk to have no clue about it.
I don't know what that number is right off the top of my head.
Just curious.
I can say that every closing we do at our office, we tell them, hey, there's a big benefit out there for you. Go before April 1st to the Hubert's office and go claim it, because it's a great benefit for the citizens of Carroll County that not everybody has.
Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you both.
Thank you.
We will move into the agenda for Tuesday. First on our list is something from the judicial branch, another wonderful grant. I'm going to ask Chief Judge John Simpson of the Superior Court to please come forward and do our presentations for the ARPA grant and then also for the Veterans Treatment Court.
Thank you. We have again applied for ARPA grant in the amount of $1.002 million. This will be the basic categories we've dealt with before of juror pay and other related things. We will hear from that as soon as next week, but really soon. And so we would ask that you again approve this. It's been very effective with the backlog cases in the jail. And I looked at the jail list yesterday. I was pleased to see it click below 400 to 397. And that is way below pre-pandemic levels. Pre-pandemic levels, we were well over 500. So the grant has been a tremendous help with that, and we thank you for your help in allowing us to do this. We're pleased to announce that we've gotten a $900,000 grant from the Bureau of Justice Administration for a veterans court. This will treat people who have served in the military and they have become justice involved. I've worked in such a court for 5 years in Newnan, and with the split to the new West Georgia Circuit, this was my main goal, to get such a court for us. And we will be using existing staff out of the mental health court. We'll be using the Pathways Counseling Program, and the grant will take effect January 1 of 25. And the reimbursement is going to be, we anticipate a much better system than we had with ARPA. It's explained to us that we will submit our reimbursement request and will receive reimbursement within 3 days of the submission. So we look forward to serving veterans. One of the unique aspects of the Veterans Treatment Court is that we have veterans who are mentors who work with our clients. And it's been a great experience doing this in Newnan, where you saw people who were otherwise in the state prison, but they were able to deal with their issues of post-traumatic stress, addiction issues, mental health counseling, and they come out and they're able to be effective parents, have their own home, parent their children, work a job. And a number of our people have been Carroll County residents that we served in Newnan. And I have to say, we have had a quarterback in this, and it's been Miss Sydney North. This whole grant cycle, how long have we been at this now? For 2.5 years? Roughly 2.5 years. And she has written $6.1 million in grants and has received every single grant. And if you focus on this veterans grant, there were five positions for our whole nation, very competitive. And Sydney quarterbacked that thing through and won that for us. And I would like for her to say something or answer questions, so come forward, Miss Sydney.
Yeah, so I would just like to say that working with Judge Simpson and with all of you for the past 2.5 years has been just a really great experience, because this is my home, so all the grants that we write are really important to me because I like to see our community do well. And it's like Judge Simpson said, I think we've done a great job of helping our backlog and helping people in the community through the grants that we've written, and we're excited to continue doing so through ARPA and now through the Veterans Treatment Court. So I just appreciate y'all and all of the help that you've given us to make it possible as well.
So as I understand, you said there's only 5 of these in the United States?
Yes, 5 Veterans Treatment Court grants were given out for the entire country. So yes, it's through the Department of Justice.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say just one other little interesting tidbit was this week we received a contact from New York, and they said that we created the first Veterans Treatment Court, and we saw that you were getting into the business and creating a court, and we would like to partner with you and help you in doing this. And we submitted some questions to them, and they already got us some good information, but it just makes us feel this really good vibe of the way this movement is going across the country to help these veterans who sometimes wind up homeless and disconnected from society. It's just a real good vibe going on.
I'm appreciative of what you all have done. That's amazing, the amount of money that you've been able to secure in the Veterans Court. I think back to my grandfather who was in World War II. He didn't talk about the war much, but as his only grandson at the time, always was inquisitive and asking questions, and at times he would talk to me about it, and then he would catch himself after about a minute of explaining something, he would just stop and leave the conversation. And I'm thinking back in those days, there was no acronyms for PTSD or so on and so forth. So going to war and seeing people killed or your friends killed, I can't imagine what that is like to have to come back and then try to re-enter into society and deal with different things. So thank you both for the work that you've done. My only operational question is just from a reimbursement standpoint. It sounds like it's such a quick turnaround from the finance department. There would not be any cash flow issues or anything that we would need to handle on our end. That would be my only question.
I think this grant will be consistent with other BGA grants where we submit the reimbursement, and it typically takes from the end of the quarter, it takes about 15 days or so to put all of the data together and have it ready to submit, and then you submit it. A lot of that's become electronic now, where you do that over through a website, and that has increased the turnaround. We're set up on ACH with them, so once the information's filed through the website, then they ACH us the money back. But I don't think it'll pose any cash flow issues.
Thank you.
Judge, I've already expressed to you how I feel about this grant. As a veteran, I understand what a lot of these guys went through, and a lot of them just have a tough time readjusting to civilian life, and they wind up in the judicial system. And I hope that this will help prevent some of that. And again, thank you.
So Commissioners, I think I'm hearing y'all are good with putting item 1 and item 2 on a consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Sure.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Judge, thank you, Sydney. Next, we have Lori Thomas, our Executive Director for Carroll County Mental Health Advocates. We have another grant for our mental health.
Good evening. Carroll County recently was offered a Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance grant to provide mental health diversion programming in Carroll County. Before I talk to you about the specifics of that grant, I'd like to give you a little history about diversion services in Carroll County, just to make sure that you know how many programs we have been operating in this county. In 2018, the Mental Health Pretrial Diversion Program was created, and this was a partnership between the Solicitor's Office and Carroll County Mental Health Advocates. The program addressed defendants who had misdemeanor charges, who were charged basically because of some mental health factors. They would not have been charged had those factors not been in place. Many of those participants were never previously diagnosed with a mental disorder and had previously not received any mental health services. So they enrolled in this one-year program. And this program was in lieu of sentencing for those misdemeanor charges. While they were in that program, then they received mental health assessments, they received mental health treatment, they received case management services and peer support services. And since the inception of that program, we have had 100 clients that have gone through the program. 71 of them have completed the program, which means their original misdemeanor charges were dismissed. But more importantly, they were not in probation, jail, or in the court system. So that program was unfunded, received no funds from Carroll County. Carroll County Mental Health Advocates has funded that program, that very successful program. In 2020, CMHA created an early diversion program using SAMHSA grant funds that were awarded to Carroll County. Excuse me. Individuals who were diagnosed or undiagnosed were referred from law enforcement or the crisis response teams in our county to an early diversion program. So this would be pre-arrest, pre-booking. They were coming to the attention of law enforcement or the crisis response teams, and they recognized that there was probably a mental health issue there. And so these individuals would also get that mental health assessment and treatment. They would get case management services and peer support services with the goal of connecting them to sources in the community and keeping them out of the criminal justice system and further interactions with law enforcement officers. Since that program started, we have had 42 people enrolled in the early diversion program with a 91% completion rate. We had 3 individuals who were arrested during their time in that program. So that's another very successful program. Unfortunately, this grant ends in April of 2025, so that's why we're here tonight. In 2024, Carroll County applied for this Department of Justice BJA grant, and this would be to continue these diversion services in Carroll County. In September, we were notified that we were one of 13 programs nationally that were awarded a 3-year grant totaling $550,000 over that 3-year funding cycle. Accepting this award would mean a continuation of the partnership between the Solicitor's Office and CMHA. It would also provide funding for a combined mental health pretrial diversion program and the early diversion program. So individuals who have a diagnosed mental disorder or those who have a co-occurring disorder, which is mental health and substance use, would be able to participate in community-based services as opposed to being in the criminal justice system. So if this award is accepted, we would build on the diversion services that we already have in place, but we would also use it to expand, replace, and improve on the services that we have so that we could expand into more courtrooms and serve more individuals. So we're excited about this new opportunity.
I just want to say, during my tenure with the state, I audited the effectiveness performance audits on the state's diversion program, and it was effective compared to alternative. So I would certainly be for it, and certainly for anything that would improve and enhance the mental health capacities that we have in Carroll County. What do you see as down the road? I know these things typically renew, but is that your sense that the entity behind it, in this case, I guess the Bureau of Justice, is continuing to be an advocate for this?
Yeah, the diversion programs are really the way to keep individuals who should not be in jail, should not be on probation, should not be sentenced, out of the criminal justice system and get them into the community-based services. So they have been very successful, as the numbers in Carroll County support that. I do believe that there will be continued funding for these types of programs. Hopefully it'll be more stable funding rather than a 3-year grant every cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clarify, this diversionary program is essentially for those that have committed misdemeanors, correct? It's not hardcore felonies, if you will, because I think there's a balance, and I'm very supportive of what you're doing, but also trying to explain to the community this is not taking a murderer and sending them home. This is about certain levels that they're on a threshold, could they go in jail or not, and trying to keep them out.
Correct. One of the things that we're looking for with this new program, though, is can we expand to some lower level felony cases? Would it be a good way to keep some of those in there? But primarily this is misdemeanor cases.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
I'm now going to ask Linda Blanchard to come forward. We've seen her before, and she has some renewal grants and some new ones. So thank you, Linda.
Yes. So I have 2 grants. One of them I have applied for, and one of them that I actually have been awarded. Yay. You guys approve. The first grant is the one that I'm usually here on. This thing's a little high. I can't see you guys. There we go. The Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Grant is the grant that I get pretty much every year. That grant is based on, I don't know the exact how they do it, but they tell me what the allotment is and what I get. So this year, it's $13,051. So that's why it's a random number that they come up with, that they tell me. There's allocations, and they sent them, and that's what I applied for. And as in last year, I am applying for the grant for psychological evaluations. When a child comes into juvenile court and Judge Palmer says, I'm not really sure what we do here, like, let's get an evaluation and let's see what these child's needs are. Okay, so we just don't say, oh yeah, hey, you need this program, you need that program. We have a psychologist that actually comes in and does a psychological evaluation on the child. They come to the juvenile court, the psychologists come to the juvenile court, and these psychologicals are expensive. They're $800 a piece, so getting a little help with this is awesome, and it's a great tool for Judge Palmer to use to decide exactly what the children's best services should be. So like I said, I've applied for that grant. I've not heard back from that grant yet, but I have applied for it. The other grant, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, it's a delinquency prevention grant. This one is $50,000. It's $49,979 to be exact. But this grant is actually for prevention of families, of children. We work with the whole family. We have several programs. We have a Strengthening Families program that we use that meets, it's a 10-week program. It meets once a week. The families come in, they talk to the parents, they talk to the children, they separate them, and then they bring them together, and they talk about what they just talked about, but separately. So, you'd have a different discussion with the parent than you have with the child. And then they bring them together and say, okay, this is what we just talked about tonight. So that is one of the programs. We have a program called Functional Family Therapy, which works intensely with the parents and the children to get them on the same page, basically, like what's going on, what can we talk about. It's not really like, tell me about your feelings kind of a thing. It's more of like, how can we get you to be a functional family, which hence the name. And we do some counseling services. We have some kids that either their Medicaid won't pay for, like they apply for 10 sessions and then they won't pay for more. Well, sometimes 10 sessions isn't enough. So we use the grant for that also. And then we do have some once in a while that they don't have Medicaid, and a couple people, they get kicked off Medicaid and it takes a minute to get back on Medicaid. So we use some of the funds for that also. And that actually is a 5-year grant. I'm actually in the 3rd year of that grant. So, and that one has been awarded. They said, if you guys approve it, then I can have it.
Ms. Blanchard, thank you for being here for the conversation. My question to you is, I'm very supportive of what you're doing, so thank you. But my question is, I'm looking at some of the other grants. This is such a smaller amount, so I'm curious, from the pool that you have to choose from to apply for something, are these categories in which you work in, are they just less funded? There's not the opportunity for the larger ones, or does it require so much more that maybe you don't have the ability to try to sit and go through a longer program to try to apply for larger grants? I'm just curious, just looking at the different amounts.
Well, like I said, the burn grant, they tell me. So I can only apply for what they tell me. Right. The other, we have different programs in juvenile court. We have a juvenile wellness court that they have a grant. I'm not even sure how much that one is, to be honest with you. But my program, the CHINS program, works with truancies and ungovernables and the lower level youth. Okay. But when we see somebody who's a little higher, they have higher needs, like more mental health needs, if they have a diagnosis of some kind, we have a juvenile wellness court. So then they go to that program. So we have different grants. So my program only deals with this, but then the wellness court, I don't know how much that grant is, to be honest.
So under the umbrella of juvenile court,
yes,
there may be others that are larger amounts.
Yes.
Just what you're here for today just happens to be smaller ones.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just a curious question. Does the school system or school systems have any such funding mechanisms or grant availabilities? Since we're dealing with youth here.
I'm not sure. That we can get grants for them, or do they have grants? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, both, I guess. I was actually thinking about you getting grants via some school systems funding, but I don't know. I mean, if we're dealing with
I don't know the answer to that.
I would think there may be something that would apply out via the education system, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. We do look for grants all the time. We're always looking to see what's out there. We do work with the school system. We have once a week, we have a committee. It's called our CHINS committee, and we meet with the children and the families, and they come in. So when the school system is there, the social workers are all there. So we have a really close relationship with the schools. But as far as the grants, I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Just a couple questions. On both of these amounts, is that awarded to you in lump sum amounts?
No, it's quarterly, and it's what Ms. Cersei was talking about. It's the same BGA grant that I upload and say, okay, we spent this much money, and then they send it each CA, whatever it's
Just want
called.
to see the same process. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are you good with putting both these grants on the consent agenda for Tuesday night? The one we have gotten, the other one we're hoping to, if you approve it and she gets it, we're good to go. So y'all good with consent?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you very much.
Item number 6 is our recreational outdoor lighting. Thad Ferguson, our Recreation Director.
Good evening, Board. Since we last met in October, I've had the opportunity to speak with multiple people regarding our light project, and it is my recommendation that we cancel the light project at the Recreation Department. Part of that is we're going to be getting an overall outdoor renovation upgrade over the wintertime, and part of that is some electrical upgrades that we're going to be doing. And both of the companies that we brought before you in October, Musco and PSG, that were the two finalists for this award, they both have specific verbiage in their warranties that do not cover any related electrical supply issues or improper electrical systems. So we'd like to cancel this project so we stay in compliance with all warranties on this project, and that we would just redo a new RFP once all electrical upgrades have been taken care of over this next few weeks or next few months, however long that takes to complete those electrical upgrades.
Mr. Ferguson, I have a question, and I've thought of this since you and I spoke last. I'm wondering if it would be beneficial for us to do like an RFQ, request for qualifications, and hire, in government you hate to use the word consultant because it seems like people show up and make all this money, but you hire people that have extraordinary knowledge in a particular field. But I wonder, before you move even through with this upgrade, if you bring someone, if we did an RFQ, brought someone on board that understands electrical, understands lighting, understands recreation, that's had a cross-section field of all of that, and let them help work through what you're doing, knowing how that should apply possibly to the new RFP that we're going to send out, help narrow that scope of what we're trying to get, a quality product, but something that's reasonably priced. And when I'm looking at this, the state procurement now requires us to put some type of budget out there, right? Which I don't think is the smartest thing in the world, but that's something that we have to abide by. And we're talking $1 million that we have put out there on the site, whether it's below that or more than that. But that is such a substantial amount of money. I'm just wondering, given the dynamics of everything, I agree stepping back is the right thing to do, but I'm just wondering if we should try to bring someone on, not just making a phone call and having 2 or 3 or 4 people, but someone that is dynamically in charge of helping look at something like this and following through. And I think at the end of the day, in that amount of money that we're going to be spending in that neighborhood, if they know what they're doing, they probably will more than save what we would spend to hire them. And when you do an RFQ, that's something that we can come back through the chairman or whatever and negotiate what they would be paid. That's not something you put out to say we're going to agree to a certain amount of money. You get the qualifications, narrow through, and then it opens you up to have conversations with that individual or firm to see if there can be a price reached for what they would charge for their services, and we can take it or not take it. But that's just something that I think maybe the board should consider, and that's such an investment that is going to be dependent on for such a long time.
Right.
That's not a vehicle we're buying and maybe trading out every 4 or 5 years. We hope that's going to be there for a long, long time. I mean, the poles, I've done a little bit of investigation too. I've heard that you need, regardless if they're the cement poles or the wooden poles, those should be inspected anytime you're doing a new lighting upgrade. And I'm not saying that you're not going to do that. I'm just saying, I'm wondering at that level of expertise, should we bring someone on to help guide us through it? But it's just a suggestion.
So through conversation, we have kind of started that process already. The chairman has reached out for some names across the state, the county, that could give us some of that insight that we could work with on this project, specifically what you're talking about. So that process has kind of already started.
Okay,
To
so is
try to
that-
get a third party to help
Okay.
with that process.
So is that something, Chairman, that you're going to do on your own? Or, because in other words, the RFQ would be an actual process versus if you're doing something that would be, that you're just handling?
I think right now we're just on the beginning of, what does that look like? Who are the, what would that cost be? Who is that person? So just the questions out there right now are, do these people exist? About who does the state uses them? What is the price before I can come back to you and say, here's what I have researched, here's what I have found out. Are you interested? So obviously, yes, you're interested in going forward and researching, and so that's where we are right this moment. Because I recognize we don't have anybody on staff that knows these details, nor do we need somebody full-time on staff or something like this. So that's where we are right this moment. It's just we realized that when the warranties came out, we said this is not our area of expertise, and we need someone who can walk us through it. So have we used facilitators for other stuff? So yes, that's where we are right now in the finding out what does that cost? What does that look like that I can bring to you, decide if you're interested in, then we can put it out.
That sounds good, thank you.
So this cannot go on a consent agenda. So on Tuesday night, we will,
We could put it on the
Okay,
consent
okay, I was-
agenda.
okay.
We could put it, the cancellation of the RFP on the consent
okay,
agenda.
so we can do that. Okay, so, and Steve, you're good with that because you were the one that wanted to wait another month.
Yeah, I'm fine with
For us
that.
to explore some more, okay.
Thad and I and Avery and I have had some discussions over
Okay.
this.
So if I'm understanding, are y'all good with putting, canceling of this RFP on the agenda for Tuesday night? Okay.
Well, what we can do is put this on the agenda, and then one of us can make a motion to terminate the RFP for the lighting.
Okay. All right.
And I'm fine with that. I would just add in the discussion, and it sounds like you've started it, is before we go have any overhaul of wiring or whatever, I'm not saying that person doesn't know exactly what they're doing, but if somebody can connect what is or isn't done from that versus down the road, we know we got to have lighting, I want them brought or an RFQ or something on the front end, not after all this other is done. I'm not trying to delay it. I'm just saying we see through this last process all the ends that need to be shored up.
It was a bigger project than we all thought, I think, and a bigger expense than we all thought. So I think that's a smart move to go towards.
Well, all the schools in the county have replaced all their lighting. They've gone to these new lighting systems, so I'm sure they have somebody. They probably consulted someone.
And we've.
So that may be, it may be a good place to go to the school system, see who they use.
We did.
Oh, have you already thought of that?
We have.
Sorry.
But no, I'm glad to know I have someone who is supportive of that, so that's good to know. Okay. With that, I think we're done. You can go trick or treat now with your kids. All right, so I'm going to ask for item 7 and item 8, a parks equipment purchase and a streetlight special tax district. Ben Skipper to come forward.
Madam Chairman, we're looking at consideration of purchasing a Kubota RTV side-by-side priced at $16,847, including a $2,000 trade-in value to replace a 7-year-old buggy that's got 5,600 hours on it. The reason we're asking for this is the transmission went out. It's $9,000 for a new transmission or $16,000 for a new one, so we're here asking for a new one. Any questions?
Is it four-wheel drive?
Four-wheel drive.
What kind of warranty does the Kubota come with?
12 month.
And we went Kubota because of the old one.
The reason we went with Kubota, glad you brought that up, Ernie, is all other UTV
I knew you would be.
manufacturers are proud to announce that their UTVs go more than 45 miles an hour up to 75 miles an hour. So wouldn't that look cute down at McIntosh?
Right.
Somebody zipping down the road 45 miles an hour. The reason I choose Kubota is that they run 19 miles an hour. So that's why you see predominantly all of Kubota, because of the speed limiter on the unit. So thank you for bringing that up.
Are y'all good with putting this on a consent agenda for Tuesday night? Okay. All right, special tax district for streetlights.
The next one, and I forgot, Diane asked if she could present one. She said she's never got to. Trick or treat.
I think that's April Fool's, Ben.
Streetlight district, special district, consideration to approve the establishment of a streetlight district for the pavement and maintenance of streetlights in Logan Ridge subdivision. The Logan Ridge subdivision, by ordinance, has filled out a petition, and Georgia Power has provided a lighting plan for the neighborhood, which will cost the neighborhood $60 per lot.
One time, or?
One time they pay it at their taxes.
And every
Well,
year.
yeah, and,
Every year.
One time.
Every year.
and that is, that's an increase.
That's an increase.
From
The
the-
average was 40.
Right.
What other neighborhoods, but they requested different, some more lights than what was currently there.
Right.
And do we have a lot of these in the county, I'm assuming?
Streetlight districts, where'd my finance director slide away to? We have multiple districts. If there's streetlights in any neighborhood in the county, they're either a streetlight district that the county collects, Hubert's office collects, not Hubert's office, Vicki Bearden's office collects the taxes on, and we pay the bill, or their homeowners association is paying the bill. And by ordinance now, any new subdivision is required to put in streetlights. But we haven't had any, we've had one or two neighborhoods.
And the last one of these that we did, I think they were at $40 or $45, and I was talking about, because we're stuck with that bill no matter what it is, and we're guesstimating, if you will, on that tax bill, what they need to reimburse us. And so that's what Mr. Skipper is saying, that they've gone up, knowing that our fees have gone up since the last time we've done one, which was at a lot lower rate.
Steve and I was talking a while ago, why wouldn't we go direct and let Carroll EMC or Georgia Power handle that? Is that something that's even an option? That we just get out of the middle of it?
Well, the founding fathers over 10 years ago come up with this plan, and we would have to do some research of how we got here. But this is something the Board of Commissioners and Carroll EMC set up for neighborhoods more than 10 years ago. So this program's been around for a long time.
Okay, but this program was set up by ordinance, right?
By ordinance.
I mean, we have an
correct.
ordinance.
Yes, we have a
We can
streetlight
eliminate,
ordinance.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think this is a terrible idea.
Okay.
I haven't liked this. Every time this has come up, I'm sitting here scratching my head, going, why is Carroll County in the lighting business? So, I mean, if it's by ordinance, it may be time to get rid of it. I don't see, I mean, I know this one, they all signed it. They signed a petition to have the lights put in.
That's correct.
And
all the neighbors want
yeah,
it.
everybody, they all want it. But I think it's time for Carroll County to get out of the lighting business. This needs to be something between the people in the neighborhoods and the people that provide electricity, not us.
Has there ever been a case to where we didn't charge enough and we wound up paying more than what we collected?
No.
Okay.
No, Alicia's already, the last time Commissioner Chance asked that question, she did an audit of it, and it's not.
Okay.
We're not upside down.
And this even has a few dollars in it for admin fee, if you will. Not that it's labeled out that, but in other words, that the average electric bill is expected to come back in. I don't have a problem down the road if we want to consider eliminating. The only thing that I would say is that we are controlling those streets. And, you know, I understand it's dependent on the person to pay their tax bill as well, but in other words, if you've got 100 residents on living directly off of a street, that depending on those lights, I mean, I don't know. If we were losing money or people weren't paying or whatever, I would definitely agree. And I'm not saying I disagree to what you're saying, but in the same note, if there's not a problem, I don't know. If there's a problem, then tell what it is.
I think to get into the details is not all subdivisions have HOAs. And all HOAs burn off at 20 years. So If you're in a subdivision that doesn't have an HOA and all the neighbors want streetlights, then one owner has to agree to pay that light. Well, the rest of the neighbors don't feel it's fair for that one owner to pay the light. So this, and the EMC will not split the bill between two owners. Therefore, that's why the Board of Commissioners, I'm sure, being petitioned by several residents living in a neighborhood, came up with this system. It was out of a request from the neighbors wanting lights in their neighborhood.
If we get out of the business, so to speak, will that line still be on the residents' tax bill?
I think we're going to defer to the county attorney on that one.
I think the county attorney probably needs some time to research this.
Yeah, I think
it would
we're.
be that, we'd be locked into probably the ones that we're currently doing. It'd be future ones that you'd be opting out of providing that services for in the future.
So you couldn't really get out of the business. You'd just get out of the new business.
That would be the most likely scenario, I think.
Well, what's the difference in new business and old business? I don't. If we're still going to be in the business.
Well, what got me started on this was it's light overflow.
Sure.
These neighborhoods have lights and the lighting overflows into people that live around them that don't want the light.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it came to my attention. And there are people that down there asking me about the one at Logan Ridge. One in particular that's real close, and he said, "So my backyard's going to be lit up." And I went, "Yep."
Very possible.
Oh, it's not absolutely it will.
But citizens even could go ahead and get their own light in their yard. Even if they didn't have street lights, you can get those, I can't remember, I had one when I lived out in Clem.
We had two in our yard for years.
Yes, so you could still get that if
we
they
had a
weren't street lights.
bill came every month for the lights in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
But back to Logan Ridge.
Yeah.
Because
Are y'all gonna put this one
Danny's
on?
ready to go trick-or-treating. He told me to hurry.
Y'all go putting this on consent and we will,
This is the last one I'm voting yes on.
we will put this on somebody at Ty Singer's list to look into for us. Great, thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, so last thing on our list tonight, number 9 is a Public Works equipment purchase. And so we have Danny Yates, our Public Works Director, to present this item.
Thank you, Chair, Board. I know I've talked to most of y'all about this. We're trying to replace a 23-year-old fuel truck that we currently have at Public Works. We're not replacing the body, the fuel tanks, all the oil tanks. We're going to take them off the old truck and put them on a new cab and chassis. Everybody that runs our fuel truck, they like the way it's set up. There's no need of changing that. Everything's good. And so when I sent out the bids, we made it mandatory that anyone wanting to bid on this truck had to come to our place and take all their measurements, because we're not going to buy a truck that bid will not fit on. And so we did. We had 3 come measured. We only had 2 that turned in bids that we accepted. One we did not accept. And the lowest was Peterbilt of Atlanta. We do currently have one Peterbilt truck in our fleet out at Public Works. And so I'm recommending going with Peterbilt of Atlanta for $155,407.
And I will say, owning a fuel truck, this is the going rate, the right price. Actually, a better price than what we got a couple of years ago. So.
Well, I like the warranty. I'm the warranty guy.
Yes, sir.
All the department heads said we have a warranty guy on the board. So when I see that extended warranty getting us 2 more years over the other, and we're still coming in $45,000 cheaper than, or 40, whatever, rounding off numbers, 40 grand, whatever, that makes me feel pretty good. And I know we have some other Macs, but obviously our conversations, you still feel comfortable. Peterbilt's obviously a very well-known and a very respected brand too. But
yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you.
And the warranties, and I know you look, because the mileage and the years don't line up like you see most warranties. Usually it's 2-year, 250,000, 3-year, 300,000. They gave us different options. This truck is 23 years old. It only has 319,000 miles on it. So we don't need miles and miles of warranty. We need as many years possible.
Are y'all going to be putting this on a consent agenda?
400 cubic inch engine
455 horsepower, Mr.
with a blower and an automatic transmission.
Automatic transmission.
Air ride seats, air conditioning, AM, FM, right? You need a driver?
No, we have one of that now.
And going over the agenda for Tuesday night, we do have
Thank you.
two items, thank you, Danny, two items for zoning. And then the business session, pretty much all of it is on a consent agenda. And we will not have an executive session meeting Tuesday night. So I will thank y'all for attending the work session.
All righty.